The story opens on a quiet, sunlit afternoon. The narrator, a 24-year-old man with an observant and reflective nature, finds himself alone in the living room of his friend's house. Sunlight streams lazily through the half-open blinds, dust motes drifting in the warm light. The air carries the faint scent of coffee lingering from the morning, comforting yet unremarkable, until she enters. His friend's mom, a woman in her early 40s, moves through the space with an effortless grace. She wears a soft, cream-colored cardigan over a simple blouse, and the subtle, floral fragrance of her perfume catches his attention before her presence fully registers. She's confident in a quiet, unassuming way, her movements deliberate but not showy. Her posture exudes maturity, and yet there's a softness to the way she smiles, a hint of vulnerability beneath her composure. The narrator notices the little details, the way she tucks a loose strand of hair behind her ear, the curve of her fingers as she adjusts a stack of books, the way her gaze lingers on him for just a fraction longer than socially required. His heart flutters, not with desire alone, but with curiosity and the thrill of discovering someone unexpectedly complex. There's an almost magnetic tension in the air, subtle yet undeniable. He feels a small thrill of guilt, too, knowing that he's seeing her in a way that his friend never could or should. The age difference is palpable in the way she carries herself, in the quiet wisdom behind her smiles. Yet there's also an approachable warmth that draws him in. It's a contradiction that makes him uneasy and excited at the same time. A moment of connection occurs when she hands him a book he had been looking for. Their hands brush, and the touch is light but lingering. He feels the softness of her skin against his fingers, the warmth of her hand, the faint pulse of life that seems almost electric in its simplicity. He looks up, and she meets his eyes with a knowing smile, one that is teasing yet entirely natural. For a moment, words aren't needed. The room fills with unspoken understanding and a delicate tension neither of them tries to name aloud. As she moves to the kitchen, he catches the sway of her movements, the subtle rhythm in the way she walks, and the soft murmur of her voice as she speaks to someone on the phone. Every small sensory detail, the perfume, the sound of her voice, the warmth of her hand, lodges itself in his mind, leaving a trace of fascination that is difficult to ignore. Narrative purpose. This scene sets the foundation for slow burn tension. It introduces the narrator's internal perspective, establishing curiosity, admiration, and a growing, respectful fascination with his friend's mom. The age gap is suggested through her maturity and grace rather than explicitly stated, while their physical proximity and fleeting touches plant the seeds of attraction. The audience is invited to feel the narrator's mixture of excitement, hesitation, and awe, a careful balance of warmth, subtle tension, and human relatability that will drive the story forward. The evening settles in quietly, the golden light of sunset filtering through the living room windows. Shadows stretch across the floor, creating a soft, intimate atmosphere. The narrator is helping his friend's mom organize a small pile of books and magazines, his movements careful, almost tentative. The day has felt ordinary until this moment, yet an undercurrent of anticipation seems to hum through the room. She bends slightly to reach a lower shelf, and he notices the subtle curve of her neck, the way her hair catches the fading sunlight. His pulse quickens, not with overt desire, but with the thrill of being close to someone so graceful, so quietly commanding. She hands him a book, and their fingers brush again, this time lingering just a heartbeat longer. The warmth of her skin, the faint perfume she wears, fills the space between them. It's an innocuous touch, yet it feels charged, weighted with possibility. That happens. She leans in just slightly, the soft rustle of her cardigan brushing his arm. Her voice, low and smooth, reaches only his ears. Want me to tell you what women really want? The words are almost playful, almost teasing, but they carry a depth that surprises him. Her breath fans his cheek briefly, a whisper of warmth that leaves him momentarily breathless. For a second, the narrator freezes. His mind races, yet the sound of her voice, gentle and knowing, steadies him. He catches the flicker of amusement in her eyes, the subtle curve of her lips hinting at a secret, something intimate and unspoken. There is no rush, no pressure, just the quiet tension of two people navigating a delicate, uncharted space between them. He wants to respond, to ask what she means, yet words fail him. Instead, he swallows hard, feeling the subtle thrum of his own heartbeat in his ears. Her presence is grounding and exhilarating at the same time, a paradox that leaves him both nervous and completely attentive to every small gesture she makes. She tilts her head slightly, watching him with an expression that is both curious and patient, as if she knows more than she's letting on. The room is filled with ordinary sounds, the faint ticking of a wall clock, the soft shuffle of papers, but they seem muted, secondary to the quiet electricity between them. He notices how she pauses, her hand resting lightly on the edge of the bookshelf, the warmth of her palm radiating almost imperceptibly. Every little detail, the softness of her voice, the brush of her hair, the gentle tilt of her head, imprints itself in his mind, forming a memory he can't easily shake. Narrative purpose. This moment heightens the slow-burn tension and deepens emotional intimacy. It introduces flirtation that is subtle and sophisticated rather than overt, emphasizing non-sexual touch, shared glances, and whispered words. The narrator's internal perspective, his nervous fascination, awe, and curiosity, guides the audience into feeling the complexity of the attraction. The age gap dynamic is gently reinforced through her confident composure and his youthful, observant hesitation. This scene ensures that the audience feels the quiet spark of desire, building anticipation for the relationship's emotional development. Days pass, each one blending into the next with a gentle rhythm that the narrator begins to savor. The spark of curiosity from their first whispered moment hasn't faded. It has grown into a quiet fascination, a sense of connection that he can't quite name. He finds himself noticing her in ways he hadn't before. Not just her physical grace, but the small gestures that reveal her personality, her intelligence, and her unspoken vulnerabilities. This afternoon, they're cooking together in the warm, sunlit kitchen. The smell of simmering vegetables mixes with the faint scent of her perfume, creating a comforting, intimate atmosphere. She hands him a chopping knife, and their hands brush briefly. The contact is fleeting, but he feels the gentle pressure of her fingers, the subtle warmth that lingers, and his chest tightens with awareness. He catches her glance, and she smiles, a quiet, knowing smile that doesn't rush him, but invites him into her world. Their conversation flows easily, natural yet layered with subtext. She talks about her day, about small triumphs and frustrations, and he listens, captivated by her voice, the way it rises and falls, the little inflections that reveal more than the words themselves. He notices the tilt of her head when she's thinking, the way her eyes soften when she laughs. Every detail becomes a lesson in subtlety, teaching him to observe and appreciate without overstepping. Later, she suggests they water the garden together. Outside, the sun has softened, casting a golden glow over the plants. As they kneel to tend to the flowers, their knees brush. He feels the warmth of her leg through the fabric of her jeans, a fleeting contact that sends a small jolt through him. She doesn't pull away, yet neither does she emphasize it, allowing the touch to exist, natural and unspoken. There's a quiet intimacy in these shared tasks, in a way their movements synchronize without effort, in the easy companionship that grows heavier with subtle desire. By the time they return indoors, a quiet calm has settled over them. They sit in the living room with a shared book, elbows occasionally bumping, knees brushing, their proximity intimate yet socially acceptable. He notices how she leans slightly toward him when she laughs, the way her hand rests near his, not touching but close enough to hint at something unspoken. He's learning that connection isn't always declared. Sometimes it's whispered in glances, in the spaces between words, in the quiet moments of shared attention. Narrative purpose. This segment deepens the emotional intimacy and slow burn tension between the narrator and his friend's mom. By emphasizing shared activities, small gestures, and fleeting touches, the story builds a natural and believable closeness. The audience experiences his fascination, respect, and growing desire, all framed in YouTube-safe, non-sexual interactions. The age gap dynamic remains subtle, reinforced by her confident, mature composure and his attentive, slightly awed perspective. By the end of this part, the emotional stakes are raised. The audience is drawn into the anticipation of the next whisper, the next unspoken connection, and the possibility of deeper feelings yet to unfold. The rain taps softly against the window, a gentle percussion that fills the otherwise quiet room. The narrator and his friend's mom sit side by side on the couch, their shoulders nearly touching, watching the droplets streak down the glass. The dim light casts a warm, amber glow over the living room, softening edges and creating a cocoon-like intimacy. For the first time, the world outside seems distant, irrelevant, as if this small corner of space belongs solely to them. He notices the subtle shifts in her posture, the way she leans slightly toward him when a gust of rain rattles the window pane, or the way her fingers curl lightly around the edge of the couch cushion. She doesn't reach for his hand, yet her proximity, the warmth radiating from her arm and shoulder, is undeniable. The narrator feels a quiet tension coil in his chest, a mix of anticipation, nervousness, and an unspoken desire he's not yet ready to name. Their eyes meet in fleeting glances, each one heavy with things left unsaid. When she looks away, it's to hide a smile that threatens to betray her amusement at his distracted attentiveness. The rain outside seems to echo their internal rhythm, steady, soft, and persistent, a quiet backdrop to the emotions that hover unacknowledged between them. He wants to speak, to bridge the invisible gap, but words feel clumsy, inadequate. Instead, he shifts slightly closer, sensing rather than asserting, letting their shared silence speak. She responds by tilting her head toward him, her hair brushing faintly against his shoulder. The contact is brief, almost accidental, yet it carries weight, a gentle acknowledgement of the subtle pull between them. Her breath catches slightly as she comments on the rain, a small, human sound that makes him acutely aware of every detail. The tilt of her chin, the curve of her lips, the soft sigh that escapes her when she relaxes into the couch. He notices the texture of her sweater against his arm, the warmth radiating through the fabric, the faint scent of her perfume mingling with the comforting smell of the room. Every small sensory detail becomes magnified, charged with significance. The room holds them in a quiet suspension, a moment outside time. He recognizes the delicate balance. One wrong move could shatter this fragile connection, yet the restraint itself heightens the intimacy. Their silent confessions, the stolen glances, the barely there touches, the shared breathing, speak louder than words ever could. Narrative purpose. This part heightens the slow burn tension by focusing on unspoken feelings, subtle physical cues, and emotional vulnerability. The rain and dim lighting amplify intimacy, creating a safe, reflective space for the audience to feel the narrator's mixture of nervous excitement, admiration, and growing attachment. The age gap dynamic remains understated, revealed through her poised maturity and his attentive, slightly awkward curiosity. By the end of this segment, the emotional stakes are higher, leaving the audience yearning to see if these silent confessions will eventually find expression, setting up the story's next phase of conflict and connection. The evening hums with the quiet murmur of a small gathering at her home. Friends chatting in the kitchen, soft music playing in the background, the clink of glasses punctuating the air. The narrator stands nearby, helping clear a tray of snacks, his hands slightly trembling despite the mundane task. Every movement feels amplified, every glance toward her carrying a weight he struggles to name. He's painfully aware of the age difference, of the lines society draws, of the guilt and curiosity that intertwine in his chest. She moves through the room with effortless grace, greeting her friends warmly, her laughter light but melodic. Yet every so often, her gaze finds him. The way she looks at him isn't overt. It's subtle, a fleeting softness in her eyes, the tilt of her head, a micro-smile that lingers just enough to make his pulse quicken. He wonders if anyone else notices, if anyone could possibly understand the storm of feelings brewing quietly in the spaces between them. At one point, she leans toward him under the pretense of handing him a glass of wine. Their fingers brush as she passes it, and the contact lingers for a heartbeat too long. The warmth of her hand, the firmness and yet softness of her touch, sends a quiet shiver down his spine. He wants to pull back, but the magnetic pull of her presence roots him in place. Their eyes meet for an instant longer than necessary, and he feels the invisible weight of unspoken desire pressing between them. He retreats briefly to the kitchen counter, trying to steady his thoughts, to quell the rising tide of confusion and longing. Part of him is terrified of crossing boundaries, of the social implications, of letting himself feel something he isn't supposed to. Yet another part of him aches for more. A conversation, a touch, a look that acknowledges the tension without shattering it. The conflict is internal but relentless, a tug-of-war between restraint and yearning. She notices his momentary withdrawal. Quietly, she approaches, standing near him without forcing a presence, her voice calm, familiar. "You okay?" she asks softly. The casual tone masks the depth of concern in her eyes, the subtle warmth in her voice, and it's enough to make him realize how deeply he's drawn to her. The brush of her shoulder against his arm as she moves past, though innocent, leaves a lingering warmth that he carries with him, a reminder that their connection isn't just in his imagination. Narrative purpose. This segment deepens emotional realism, emphasizing the tension between desire and social propriety. By framing their attraction within the context of a social gathering, the story allows the audience to experience both external pressures and internal conflict. Subtle touches, fleeting glances, and quiet gestures maintain YouTube-safe intimacy while heightening anticipation. The age gap dynamic continues to be implied through her confident maturity and his attentive, slightly unsure perspective. By the end of this segment, the emotional stakes are at their highest yet. Both are acutely aware of their feelings, and the audience senses that the story is approaching a pivotal moment of emotional revelation. Night has fallen, and the world outside is muted, softened by darkness and the occasional flicker of streetlights through the windows. Inside, the living room is bathed in a gentle amber glow from a single lamp, casting long shadows across the furniture and enveloping the space in a sense of quiet intimacy. The narrator sits on the couch, his hands folded tensely in his lap, his mind racing with thoughts he has been holding back for weeks. Across from him, his friend's mom sits, a cup of tea warming her hands, her posture relaxed yet attentive, as if she senses the storm of emotion swirling inside him. For a long moment, neither speaks. The silence is heavy, but not uncomfortable. It is filled instead with the weight of unspoken feelings, the anticipation of confession, and the subtle electricity of proximity. He notices the small details, the way her fingers curl around the cup, the soft sigh that escapes her lips, the tilt of her head as she watches him. Every movement, every breath, feels magnified in the stillness of the room. Finally, unable to contain himself, he speaks, his voice low and uncertain. I don't know how to say this, but I think about you more than I probably should." The words hang in the air, tentative but loaded with truth. She doesn't flinch, doesn't pull away. Instead, she sets her cup down carefully and leans slightly closer, her eyes softening with understanding. There is no judgment, only warmth, and an invitation to continue. Encouraged, he shifts closer, careful not to overstep, and she mirrors his movements subtly, closing the gap without words. Their knees brush, and the contact sends a quiet thrill through him. She reaches out gently, her hand resting over his, letting it linger there. He feels the warmth of her palm, the steady pulse beneath her skin, the reassurance in her touch. It is grounding, comforting, and intimate, more powerful than any words could convey. Her voice, soft and calm, breaks the silence. I've felt it too. I've noticed how you look at me, how you listen, how you pay attention. Her words are simple but heavy with significance, acknowledging what has been building between them in glances, touches, and shared silences. He feels a mixture of relief, wonder, and awe, his chest tight with the beauty of the moment. They lean just slightly closer, close enough that their shoulders brush, and for a heartbeat, their world narrows to the warmth, the scent, the quiet rhythm of each other's presence. No dramatic declarations, no rushed confessions, just two people recognizing a connection that has grown slowly, deeply, and naturally. A quiet laugh escapes them simultaneously, bridging the gap between nervousness and comfort, tension and release. Narrative purpose. This segment represents the emotional climax of the story. It resolves the slow-burn tension with tenderness, emotional honesty, and subtle physical intimacy. Their age gap dynamic is gently reinforced through her confident composure and his cautious admiration. The audience experiences the release of built-up anticipation while remaining within YouTube-safe boundaries, focusing on hand touches, shoulder brushes, and lingering glances as expressions of affection and desire. By the end of this part, the emotional stakes are fulfilled, setting the stage for a warm, satisfying resolution. Morning light filters gently through the kitchen window, casting a soft, golden glow over the wooden counters and the steaming mugs on the table. The world outside is waking slowly, but inside, there's a quiet sense of calm and completeness. The narrator and his friend's mom are sharing this space, the aftermath of last night's confessions settling around them like a comforting blanket. He moves carefully, pouring coffee into their mugs, and notices how natural it feels to be near her now. The tension that once threaded through every glance and gesture has softened into something steady, warm, and intimate. She leans slightly against the counter as she stirs her tea, and for the first time, the narrator doesn't overthink their proximity. Their shared comfort is palpable, a quiet acknowledgement that their connection has shifted into a deeper, more trusting space. Their hands brush as he hands her a mug. The contact fleeting but deliberate. He feels the warmth of her fingers, the subtle pressure of her grip lingering just long enough to send a quiet thrill through him. She smiles at him softly, a smile that radiates both affection and reassurance, and he realizes that the complicated tangle of emotions he has carried for weeks is now something simple and honest. Mutual respect, admiration, and a tender fondness that neither feels the need to rush or explain. They sit at the small kitchen table, the morning sunlight spilling across the surface and casting dappled patterns on the floor. Conversation flows easily, lightly teasing and sharing observations about trivial things, yet underneath it is a current of understanding and shared memory. The silent acknowledgement of last night's confessions, of the tension that has melted into quiet companionship. Every glance, every brush of arms as they reach for sugar or stir their drinks, reinforces the intimacy that has grown naturally, unforced. At one point, she reaches out, placing her hand gently on his forearm. The touch is grounding, reassuring, and charged with the quiet weight of their connection. He feels the subtle heat radiating through her skin, the calm steadiness of her presence. And in that moment, he knows that what they have is real, meaningful, and enduring. There is no rush, no need for grand declarations, just the simple, profound comfort of being seen, understood, and appreciated. The room is filled with ordinary morning sounds, the hum of the coffee maker, the distant chirping of birds, the gentle creak of the floorboards, but they seem amplified in significance, framing the serenity of the moment. It is in these small details that their relationship truly exists. The brush of fingers, the shared smiles, the quiet laughter over a mundane comment. the unspoken promise of continued care and connection. Narrative purpose. This final segment resolves the story with a warm, satisfying conclusion. It emphasizes emotional intimacy, mutual respect, and subtle physical affection that remains YouTube safe. Hand touches, lingering glances, and shoulder brushes. The slow burn tension has fully matured into a steady, nurturing connection. The age gap dynamic is gently acknowledged through her calm maturity and his attentive admiration, leaving the audience with a sense of closure, contentment, and the comforting knowledge that their story, though unconventional, is complete and emotionally fulfilling.